What's really good? What's really good? What's really good? Welcome back to another Wednesday night with the Sanchez Show. As always, I'm your host, Eric Sanchez, aka Legend in Two Games. Make sure you follow me across all social media platforms. As we always do, Wednesday night, 7:30, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Shout out to everybody who's watching over on Instagram. If you put a question or a comment over there, give me a moment. I'm switching back and forth between the screens, get it going. With that being said, we got a lot to get into. NFL's a week away. So you know what that means. We're going to have a lot of content, a lot of discussion with our weekly NFL picks, as well as breaking down whatever happened the week before. Going Wednesday night gives us the opportunity to break down the Thursday games, as well as everything that's going to take place on Sundays. And then as the season goes on, obviously Saturdays as well. But make sure you are subscribed to the Sanchez Show. You're not going to want to miss anything. Trust me, it's going to be a great NFL season that kicks off next week. We got college football kicking off this week. We're about 3 weeks away from the biggest fight of the year in boxing. And anything else that comes up during that time, obviously Major League Baseball playoffs, whatever else comes up. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to Real Fans, Real Talk. We had a great episode yesterday with Olympic gold medalist Kathy Boswell, as she broke down her journey through college and playing professionally overseas, but obviously highlighted by her time spent with that 84 Olympic team that won gold. Cheryl Miller was on that team, and it was a continuation of a conversation we started to have with Tina Hutchinson, another great female basketball player who around that same time, gained notoriety. There was talk about why she wasn't on the 84 team. So it's a great conversation. You'll see it over on my YouTube page as well as Real Fans, Real Talk. So make sure you subscribe to both. We'll be back on Monday with Real Fans, Real Talks. That'll be the episode right before the season starts and kicks off for us, as well as our Real Fans Real Talk Fantasy Football League. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about that. Shout out to the comment section, though. You're already buzzing on this Wednesday night, and I greatly appreciate it. So let's get to the questions and comments. I got a couple topics, a couple things I want to run down as well, if they don't come up in the comment section. So let's get to it, though. Ron Charles, he starts off the night. Texas versus Ohio State on Saturday. Who you got? This is going to be a great game. It's a rematch from last year's playoff game. Ohio State won last year in that matchup. Teams are a little bit different, though. Obviously, Ohio State does not have their quarterback. They don't have their best receiver from last year. Texas does not have their quarterback from last year. So the teams are a little different. All the hype around Arch Manning. He's the Heisman favorite right now. Texas is the number one team ranked in the country. And it's the first time that the preseason number one, is an underdog in their opening game. They're playing in Ohio State. Opening line was 2.5 points. It has started to move a little bit. Right now, Ohio State is still favored at 1.5. I like Texas. I like Arch Manning and those guys to win this game and get the revenge factor over Ohio State. Again, both teams are starting different quarterbacks, but on the side of Texas, the offense doesn't have to change any. Arch Manning, who's been in the system for 2 years as the backup, he's gotten some reps in the system in the last couple of years, but now he takes on the full role as the starter. For Ohio State, this is their third different quarterback in 3 years. So I think there's going to be a little bit more of an adjustment period there. And I also don't think you can discount, again, Texas is ranked the number one team for a reason. I understand it's on the road. If this was a neutral site, Texas would probably be favored. But I still like Texas to go in there. They played in a lot of big games, this current unit. They played on the road. They played in neutral sites. I think they'll be just fine. I actually like Texas, Ron. So I would take the 1.5 points if you can get it right now. It's a great question to start it out, though, because college football is going to be buzzing this Saturday. Great way as college football kicks off tomorrow night. Some big games. Shout out to Vernon Brownlee. He sent me a couple of picks he already likes to kick off college football weekend. So we'll get to those as well, some of the ones that he told me. Kyrie is up next. He said, I got a few NBA comments before football take over. No problem, Kyrie. You know what time of year it is. Pat Bev says, if you put Paul George in Clay's role, they probably win more titles. Yeah, I agree. PG has some flameouts and Clay's shooting. I don't agree with Pat Bev. And I respect a lot of things that Pat Bev says. But in this case, the reason I don't agree is because when you say they would have won more, they won 4 championships. They went to 6 total finals. Only finals that I can think of. I mean, the 2 that they lost, I'll put it this way. Those are the 2 that you would say, all right, they probably could have won without Paul George anyway. They would have won with Klay Thompson if not for injuries in both cases. The first time blowing the 3-1 lead, Steph was hurt a little bit, and then Draymond gets suspended. Cleveland gets really hot in the second half of that series, comes back from 3-1, the only time it's ever happened in NBA history. The second finals loss is the one to Toronto, where if KD is healthy, I think they smoked Toronto. I don't even think that series is even close. And you saw it in the one quarter that KD played in that series. Golden State looked so much better than anything the Raptors could do or defend. So to me, Paul George doesn't change their trajectory in any way. I mean, what are you going to say? Oh, with Paul George, do they go to what? 5 straight NBA finals, 6 straight NBA finals? I mean, it doesn't change much, in my opinion. They had already gone to 5 straight with Klay. What more could Paul George elevate that situation to? Is he a better defender than Klay? Maybe. Does he give him additional ball handling and offensive creation? Yeah. But we're going to discount Klay's spacing and the fact that Klay did not need the ball in his hands to be effective or efficient. Klay was one of the best spot-up shooters of all time, not just during his era, of all time. And this is a guy who was a very high-efficient player. You didn't have to ISO for him. You didn't have to give him the ball and run plays with the ball in his hands. You could let him move off the ball and just when he got in the spot, get him to pass and let him shoot. I don't think Paul George would have filled that role. Now, if you're telling me as a player overall and all around was Paul George better? Yeah, I can agree with that. But I'm not going to say that Paul George would have elevated them to win more titles. Again, they won 4 championships. They played in 6 NBA finals. What more could Paul George have added to that? Even with Paul George, what more are you adding to that? So to me, I still like Klay in that situation. Pat Bev, to me, is a little bit off on that. Kyrie also wants to know, he says CBS did a top 25 of this century. Top 10, Ron, Steph, Tim Duncan, Joker, Kobe, Giannis, Durant, KG, and Dirk. It's an impressive list. I would probably make minor changes, but it also sparks a conversation that we've had so many times, not only on the show, but on other platforms have had the conversation as well. First of all, I think I would switch and probably move Dirk ahead of KG. I might move Dirk as high as 7. I would put Dirk ahead of KG, Durant, and Giannis, in my opinion. If we're talking of this century, I just think Dirk's impact was far greater than those guys. Also, keep in mind, I mean, Dirk and Giannis, career-wise and trajectory, you could talk about them doing some of the same things in terms of accolades and team success. Both of them having a championship, 1 championship. Dirk played in 2. Dirk was clearly the best player on the team. There was never a situation that anybody on Dirk's team was better than him. So when he won the MVP and was a finals, and league MVP finalist multiple times, to me, that holds a little bit more weight. KG was great in his own right, an all-time great. But KG, to me, is on this list more so because of how he ended his career with Boston. Minnesota days were great, but I don't think his Minnesota success compares to anything that Dirk or Giannis or even Durant, for that matter, has done. So to me, I would put Dirk a little higher. The top 5, top 6, I'm cool with. The interesting part to me is that they have Duncan at number 3. Because I've argued, and I said this for quite some time, that when we have the GOAT discussion, too often Duncan is overlooked. And guys with a higher profile and higher name are put ahead of Tim Duncan. This list right here, according to CBS, kind of confirms what I've been saying for a while. I think the world of Kobe. I think Kobe's great. I think Kobe's the 2nd greatest shooting guard of all time. I think you can make a legitimate discussion about Kobe being a top 12 player of all time, maybe top 10, but definitely top 12. But Duncan was overall better than him. And too often when people say, oh, we forget about Kobe, we talk about Mike and LeBron. Well, if we're going to throw Kobe in the list, we got to throw Tim Duncan in the list, because I think Tim Duncan was better and had a more accomplished career than Kobe. Kobe's numbers look better overall because of the longevity. But to me, Tim Duncan was the better overall player. Same thing with the conversation with Duncan over Shaq. That's why I've got Duncan over Shaq. And that's why I've got Hakeem over Shaq as well, for that same regard. So, but the list overall, in terms of this century, I love it. Braun has been the best player of this century. Curry's probably had the most impact. And we could debate that every day of the week if we wanted to. Again, Bron's resume stands alone. This is not to question Bron's greatness. But if we're talking impact, Steph Curry has changed the game not only on the NBA level, he's changed it as far down as the grade school level. The way kids play basketball now is really rooted in Steph Curry and what he brought to the game. You see it even the change in the women's game with Caitlin Clark. You see it on every level that the game of basketball has changed because of Steph Curry and his ability to shoot from range. Again, no knock on LeBron. This is not a LeBron hate or a LeBron comparison to anybody else. I'm just saying if we're talking impact, it would be Steph Curry. But totality of resume, it's got to be LeBron. So Kyrie, I do, for the most part, like I said, top 6, I definitely agree with. 7, 8, 9, and 10, I probably would switch that up a little bit. I would move Dirk up a little bit because I think Dirk should be a little higher if we're going to talk about it. Especially, I think people forget how good Dirk was, man. Dirk was really, really good. And for most of his career, remember, Steve Nash left Dallas very early. So if you look around a lot of times, the second best player Dirk played with was Jason Terry. Jason Terry, by most regards, is a great role player / 6-man. And for a lot of years, that was the second best player on Dirk's team. And yet Dirk, again, went to 2 NBA finals, was a league MVP, multiple Western Conference finals appearances. Dirk was that guy, bro, with a lot less help than everybody else on this list. Everybody else on this list has a bona fide Hall of Famer that they played with, that they, for a substantial amount of time. If you want to say, oh, Dirk had Jason Kidd, he had Jason Kidd for like 2 seasons. He didn't have prime Jason Kidd. That was Jason Kidd after the Nets. That was Jason Kidd that was a little slower and was just a true floor general. But it wasn't Jason Kidd that was leading the Nets to the finals. This was an older version of Jason Kidd. Those were the best versions, the best teammates that Dirk had. KG played with Hall of Famers in their prime. Durant's played with a lot of Hall of Famers in their prime. Giannis, I guess you could put Giannis and Dirk in that same conversation, but I would still take the help that Giannis has had in terms of having Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, and then even Dame later on, in comparison to Dirk having Tyson Chandler, Jason Terry, and Jason Kidd, probably his best 3 teammates that he had of his career. So to me, Dirk should be a little higher. I would put Dirk 7th. Let's see what else we got. Again, make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. We do this live every Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Subscribe to the Sanchez Show. Make sure you subscribe to Real Fans Real Talk, as well as we will be back with Real Fans Real Talk on Monday. Let's see. I think Ron is next. Right here. Where we at? He had the Caleb Williams question. What did Caleb Williams show in Bears preseason finale? He looked good. I've been on record as saying that I think Caleb will be better. Don't be surprised if they get off to a slow start, though. I said this last year about them. I'm going to say it again this year. Last year, it proved to be right. I think it'll be right again this year. The offense overall is going to get better under Ben Johnson. I think Caleb will be better in year 2. But let's not discount the fact that for Caleb Williams, for Rome Odunze, for DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, a lot of these guys and a lot of the offensive linemen, this is their 3rd different offense in 3 years, right? Ben Johnson coming in is a new head coach to replace what they had previously. And for some of those younger guys, like I mentioned, Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams, they played, their last year in college under a different offense. They had a different offense last year. They got a different one this year. There's a lot of young guys on this team. They drafted Luther Burden, who I think is super explosive and will be a guy that as the season goes on, you're going to start seeing big-time playmaking out of Luther Burden. Because I think Ben Johnson is going to use him a lot like they used Jameson Williams in Detroit and being able to get matchups to exploit his speed down the field. But early on in the season, I think the Bears are going to struggle because this Ben Johnson offense, if you look at how he ran it in Detroit and what he likes to do, it's rooted in timing. 3-step drop, 5-step drop, get the ball out quick, allow your playmakers to exploit matchups, and then run after the catch. For the Bears, that timing is going to take time to figure out. There's going to be some opportunities there for them, but I think there will be moments where you're going to see Caleb hold the ball too long or receivers maybe expecting the ball to be placed somewhere where it's not. Because, again, you got to get that timing down. And that's the one bad side of the 3-game preseason. You don't get the opportunity to develop the timing with your receivers and with your offensive linemen. So that's going to be one of the biggest issues for Caleb. But in terms of just that final preseason game, he looked comfortable. He looked strong. I don't want to put too much on it because, again, there weren't many starters out there on either side of the ball. He wasn't out there for a full game. And ultimately, it didn't matter. We know what it meant. It didn't matter. So Caleb and the Bears, I think long-term will be okay. Short-term, there will be some struggles. That is a very, very tough division. I've already said, if you're going to put together a parlay of teams that will not make the playoffs, the Bears are one of the teams that I would include in that parlay. I don't think they make the playoffs this year, though I think they will be feisty, and I think they will be fun to watch, especially as the season goes on. Ron also said, Eric Dickerson says, teams were told not to draft Sanders, meaning Shador. That's what Eric Dickerson said. Do I believe it? To a certain extent. Again, if you go back and watch the draft telecast that we did 2 nights of the NFL draft. First of all, what Eric Dickerson is saying is there was blatant collusion within the NFL. That I don't agree with. Now, when I say I don't agree with it, it's not to say that it can't happen. It's not to say that the league didn't want teams to draft Shador. Maybe they didn't want teams to draft Shador. Maybe they didn't. But to say blatant collusion would mean that all 32 teams would have been interested in Shador and chose not to draft him. All 32 teams were not interested in Shador, right? The Kansas City Chiefs were not interested. The Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Chicago Bears. There were a lot of teams that were not interested in Shador Sanders. So those teams, the NFL would not have even reached out to them anyway. Now, what Eric Dickerson did say was that he heard from a reliable source that the Browns were told not to draft them because he did mention the Browns by name. Maybe that is the case. Maybe the NFL did. Now, I don't know why the NFL would not want the Browns to draft him. I don't know, again, the full context of the conversation that the NFL would have had with the Browns because, again, it's a 7-round draft. So to say we're telling everybody not to take him, okay, to what extent are you telling me not to take him? Or to what extent are you recommending that I don't take him? Now, I have been on record of saying that there was a bit of will show you from the NFL. I said that what Deion had been doing in the college ranks had ruffled feathers for quite some time. You can go back to one of his first interviews when he got to Jackson State, and he came out and blatantly said that there's too much talent at the HBCU level to be ignored, and that NFL teams need to be coming down here. He said that. He was one of the first ones that challenged the NFL teams, not the league as a whole, but teams, to not just solely wait on the connections they built with these Power 5 conferences, but to explore all players, specifically HBCU players. And when he went down to Jackson State, I believe that first year after he was at Jackson State, it was the most players that had been drafted by HBCU. I think it's something like 10 to 15 years. So there was an immediate trickle-down effect. Also, I think Deion had ruffled feathers amongst the NFL types because of the way that he was able to recruit and then kind of guide these players to show them how they could build their brand and make money outside of the general power structure. We cannot forget, even though the NFL won't ever say it, college football is minor leagues for the NFL. There's a reason why the NFL wants you to pay attention to the Power 5 schools. They want to kind of filter you in that direction. They want you to notice the Alabamas, the Floridas, the Texas, the Ohio. They want that. And relationships are built on that, right? It's no secret that when Nick Saban was at Alabama, he had direct conversation with Bill Belichick all the time about players that win the draft. So it becomes your quote-unquote minor league system for the NFL. They want you to pay attention to the bigger schools and funnel money that direction, which then in turn allows you to know who these players are as they come into the NFL. CBS has college football rights. NFL has college football rights. Fox has college football rights. So this is a quote-unquote grooming process for the viewer. We're going to get you acclimated with these guys who then will move to Sundays. So when the NFL says is bigger than the name. It's about the shield. They truly mean that. They want you to focus on the teams, but also the familiarity of the players that are on the teams. Dion was doing the opposite. Dion was allowing his guys to walk around with their social media handles on their jersey. Why? Because you are your brand, right? This is how we can exploit NIL money. This is how we can exploit the notoriety that you can receive at the college level. And oh, by the way, not only are we going to exploit it, we're going to do it away from the Power 5 schools. So when Shador and Shiloh, for that matter, who were 4- and 5-star recruits, who had opportunities to go to bigger schools, decide to then go to Jackson State, that was his way of thumbing his nose at the NFL. That was basically him flipping a bird at them, right? I can recruit on that same level and get the same exposure here, and I don't have to send my boys over there. Then he took it to another level. He brings Travis Hunter in, who was the #1 cornerback at the time and who spurned Florida State to go to Jackson State. Remember, Travis Hunter had the letter of intent already signed to go to Florida State. He backtracks and says, no, I'm going to Jackson. I'm going with Dion. So when these things started happening, the NFL did not like the direction this was going. And college football definitely didn't like it. You heard Nick Saban take a jab at Deion Sanders. You heard other powerful men in that system take a jab at what Deion was trying to do at Jackson and then even at Colorado. And there's still a lot of people who don't understand the mission of what Deion was trying to do. They just tried to exploit and make it seem like he was some loudmouth who wanted the attention for himself. But really, he was bringing the attention to his team and his players, which then allowed them to get the most they could get from NIL. There were several guys on that Colorado team last year who made close to $1 million. So everybody will talk about Shador. They'll talk about Travis. They'll talk about Shiloh. But if you look, they had 5 guys drafted. I think they had 1 undrafted. They had 5 guys drafted. They had multiple guys with NIL deals. There was a freshman on the team last year who was one of the top prospects at lineman who already had a $500,000 NIL deal. So Deion showed his players how they could get the exposure, how they could build the brand, and more importantly, how they could do it independent of being at one of the Power 5 schools. Him going to Colorado was just another platform because a lot of the Power 5 schools and the big programs were not going to give him the opportunity to coach at their schools. They were going to still try to hold him back and make it seem like he was just some loudmouth. They weren't going to give him the chance to. So back to Eric Dickerson, when he says teams were told, I would like to know who these teams are. But do I think the NFL was happy that Shador was made an example of? Absolutely. Absolutely, they were happy about that. They were ecstatic that this turned in a way that made Shador and Deion look bad. I don't think it did make them look bad. I think, if anything, it allowed them to grow even their following even more. I think people love Shador more now than they did coming out of college. Shout out to Will Gordon. I see you, bro. But I think ultimately there's a little bit of truth, again, what Eric Dickerson said. I wouldn't call it collusion, though, because I don't think you could get all 32 teams to say we're not going to take him, because there were teams that weren't interested in him anyway. And I love Shador, but there were some teams that weren't. Shiloh Sanders gets cut by the Buccaneers. Shout out to Kyrie. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have people who's going to say, oh, it was due to the fight. I don't think it was due to the fight. He was undrafted when the Buccaneers picked him up. So he was already in a tough situation to make that team. This is a playoff team already, as is. Shiloh doesn't change that for them. They were a playoff team. They've got a good young secondary already. He was fighting for a bench spot, possibly a special team spot. They may have gone with somebody else. But I don't think this was rooted in the fight. He was already undrafted. So them cutting him was of no real significance to the Buccaneers. And I think ultimately he'll still get a chance to sign on with a team. And Will Gordon, for you guys, Will Gordon is sitting out this week. We're going to have him back next week, but he is in the comment section. Shout out to Pooh. She said, Eric, wonderful show with Miss Kathy. Thank you, Pooh. Yeah, it was a great opportunity. Again, I'll mention it for everybody. If they did get a chance to see it, we had Olympian, gold medalist, a legend in the women's game, Miss Kathy Boswell, on live last night. You can go back. You can see it on my YouTube page or Real Fans Real Talk. It's up on both right now. I'm loving these women legends coming on. What's crazy is the mainstream media isn't interviewing them. I agree. It's one of the things, Pooh. First off, we want to acknowledge and say thank you to all the supporters, because not only have you guys asked for these legends, now that they've actually given us the opportunity to discuss their careers and their lives and their journeys on our platform, you guys have shown up in a major way. And so we got to thank you guys for that, because you guys have come through with the questions, with the research, and made them feel so welcome. Off air, both times you guys, you saw it with Tina, who came back for 2 episodes, with Kathy, who came on yesterday. Both times off airs, if I can share this with you guys, they both expressed how much fun they had having a conversation with us, but also being able to interact with you guys. So we love that energy, and just let's just keep it rolling. But to that second part there, Pooh, it is crazy, not only that the mainstream media isn't interviewing them, I think it's crazy that the women's game, specifically in college, is not including these ladies in what's going on right now, with bridging the gap between the past and the present. Kathy mentioned yesterday about her and Cheryl a couple of years ago at All-Star Weekend wearing the shirts where they're fighting for equality in the women's game. And she said it's not just about pay, it's equality across the board, not just pay us equally, but treat us equally. Make sure the facilities are maintained the right way. Make sure we have the opportunity to travel similar to the way the men travel. So some of those things that we talked about, and it's again, it is crazy and it's sad that they're not getting the opportunity to tell these stories on a mainstream, but also connect with the players now, because there are a lot of players who don't know who these women are. And whether you want to say that's a good thing or bad thing, it is a thing. Some of these women are just too young to understand the significance and the importance of what these women did in bridging the gap and changing the narrative around women's sports. And so we're honored. I know Trip is, but I'm definitely honored to have the opportunity to sit down with both these women over the last couple of weeks, and we look forward to continuing to do it. And like I said, for you guys, keep rocking with us on it, keep tapping in, and listen, anybody you want to see on the show, we're more than willing to sit down and interview with them and have a discussion with them if they want to join. So we appreciate you guys for that as well. Kyrie said after Shiloh game, Kyrie said, can Cam Ward have instant success with the Titans? Yes. But keep in mind, they had the #1 overall pick. So do I think, when you say instant success, do I think a winning season? No. I don't think they have that type of talent. And I know people will say, well, Jaden Daniels did it last year. Jaden Daniels might have been the exception for all rookie quarterbacks, because there hasn't been a rookie who's come in and had that much success right away, especially with a team that stayed the same. We're not talking about a team that reshuffled things or brought in new players. The Commanders pretty much kept the same squad and just added Jaden Daniels. Now, the coaching staff changed, offensive coordinator changed, quarterback changed. That kind of rejuvenated that team. Cam Ward doesn't go into that type of situation, though. Cam Ward goes into a situation with a team that doesn't have a lot of talent. A team that last year, when you look at them, they were just terrible. And I know some of it was just Will Levis being really bad at quarterback, but even at the skill position, I mean, Tony Pollard's just starting to run back. Tony Pollard hasn't been good for a few seasons. They don't have a lot of weapons. I know they got Calvin Ridley, but outside of Calvin Ridley, who are the weapons that Cam Ward is throwing to? There's that clip that's going viral right now of Cam Ward literally throwing a dime to a receiver, dropping it on a dime, and the receiver just bobbles right off his hands. So will he have some instant success? If we're going to say instant success is doubling their win total from last year, yeah, I could see him getting to 6 or 7 wins. The division is not too good. They play a weak schedule. He's a really good quarterback, but he's going to have his moments. He's going to struggle. So 6 to 7 wins, I'll say instant success from the standpoint of it'll probably, they'll add more wins than last year. They'll be more competitive and competent than they were last year. I'll say that. Instant success is again, I don't know what we're using as the measuring stick for that. Shedeur struggles in Browns preseason finale. He did. However, this is not about Shedeur. The Browns put him out there with the third stringers and a lot of guys who were not going to make the team at all. It was a very, very tough situation for Shador. He didn't play well. Some people say, oh, he held on to the ball too long. He did. He was trying to make plays. But I'm not going to knock him for that. Again, Shador, I want to watch how I word this because there have been Browns fans. Shout out to Will Gordon. Shout out for the love of the game, the group chat we're in. There have been Browns fans who feel like we've been unfair or incorrect in our critique of Shador and the Browns. I've said from day one, I love Shador's game. I think Shador will be a great quarterback if he's in the right situation. I don't think the Browns are the right situation. I don't think the Browns fully are invested in the success of Shador Sanders. I think everything they've shown has shown that. Dylan Gabriel was out. Shador still couldn't get reps with the first or second team. Joe Flacco was out. Shador still wasn't getting reps with the first or second team. Shador had a great preseason game to start the preseason, and he still remained number 4 on the depth charts. So when Browns fans say, oh, you guys, y'all don't know what's going on, and y'all really thought Shador was going to get cut, why wouldn't I think Shador was going to get cut? They had him number 4 on the depth chart behind Tyler Huntley. Behind Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Joe Flacco. They had him 4th. Now they trade Kenny Pickett. That opens up the spot. They cut Tyler Huntley. They keep Shador. He's still 3rd on the depth charts. To me, that doesn't signify much confidence in the kid. That to me just shows like, all right, we'll keep him around and he's selling jerseys. It's great. We have a little bit of notoriety and excitement around the fact that we have Shador. But what's this thing really going to look like if you're the Browns after week 3 or week 4 when you could possibly be 0-4 and Shador sitting on the sidelines? You're going to have fans calling for Shador, wanting Shador to play, fans that are going to be more interested in what Shador does than anything that takes place on the field. I just don't think the Browns want that. And again, you would think after that preseason game that he had that they would have started giving him some more reps with the first team and see like, all right, maybe let's see if he could be ready. Let's see if maybe he could move up as high as our backup so that if something were to happen to Joe Flacco or if Joe isn't performing, we could then go to Shador. Instead, they got Dylan Gabriel at number 2. So I don't know what to make of this Brown situation. Shador struggling was more about, again, who he was on the field with than him, I would say, because in all those clips, you can see that there's no offensive lineman protection. People will say, oh, he's holding the ball too long. Yeah, but he's still not getting protection. He's still not getting an opportunity to see the field. He's got to make rushed and flush decisions because there's no O-line in front. So, yeah. Who's this? Mike Vrabel has had it with the Rats. Yeah, Mike Vrabel has been channeling his inner Bill Belichick in some of these press conferences. But I like Mike Vrabel. I think he's going to be good for the Patriots. I think the Patriots are a sneaky team to watch this year because they did get better in a lot of areas. The O-line got a little better. I think the running game will be better, not only because of the O-line, but also they went out and added Stephon Diggs. They drafted Kyle Williams, who's a fast young receiver. So now they have the pieces of a team that could just be a little bit more dynamic. Now, Drake May obviously is going to be the difference and all that. If Drake May takes the step up in year 2, they got a really good chance to be a good team this year. They won 4 games last year. I think they could get in a range of 8 to 9 wins this year, maybe even more, because Mike Vrabel alone, as a good head coach, I think can get you 2 or 3 more wins. So just Mike Vrabel alone, I think could take them to a 6 or 7 win team. You talk about the offensive pieces they added, the development of Drake May, I could see them getting to 8 or 9 wins. They're another team that could benefit from a division that isn't that good. Buffalo's good. Buffalo's a Super Bowl contender. Buffalo is the exception in this conversation about the AFC East. But I don't think Miami's that good. I don't think the Jets are that good. And if we're comparing those 3 teams, the Patriots probably got the best coach out of the 3. And Drake May could be the best quarterback of those 3 teams. I don't think Tua is that great that you would say, oh, he's head and shoulders above Drake May. Tua can't stay healthy. What happens if Tua misses a month of football again? Will the Dolphins tank? What happens if Tyreek makes it official that he doesn't want to be there? We know that there's some issues there. We know Mike McDaniel is probably on the hot seat. They're hoping their defense can carry them. But Miami to me, it's nothing there to see with Miami. And the Jets are a team that's also trying to find their identity offensively. The Patriots have a great opportunity here to possibly be a second place team and be fighting for a playoff spot. So keep an eye on the Patriots. Bad look by Parsons. Micah laid down on medical table. Yes and no. I don't look for Micah as a leader. So that's why I say no, because to me, I don't think it's a bad look for a young guy to do that in a preseason game. Now, if this was a guy that you looked at to be your leader, to be a guy who sets the example and sets the tone, maybe that's different. But I don't look at Micah Parsons in that way. I look at Micah Parsons as one of the young stars on his team. He's just expected to perform. Also, because of the position he plays and because he's just expected to create havoc and get to the quarterback, as long as he's doing that, just laying on the table and doing things like that won't affect anything. It's not like a receiver or a quarterback doing that because there's much more focus on those guys as leaders and as performers. For Micah, if Micah lays on the table and it comes out in the next series and gets a sack, or not even, let's say opening day he comes out and gets 2.5 sacks, we're not going to be talking about him laying on the table. We're not going to care. You're expecting your defensive players who played that edge rusher, stand-up linebacker position to kind of be a little different anyway, to just cause havoc. So you're okay with that. I'm okay with that anyway. It's only looks bad because we know he's holding out for a contract. So that's why I say yes and no. Because we know the contract situation and he's holding out, he now looks disgruntled. He comes out on opening day against the Eagles and gets 2.5 sacks. We're not going to be talking about him laying on the table. All right. Again, shout out to everybody. Shout out to the comment section on 5, man. We 30 minutes in rocking, man. The comment section has been buzzing today, and we greatly appreciate that, man. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Sanchez Show. We're live every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Make sure you guys are subscribed to Real Fans, Real Talk. We will be back on Monday at 7 p.m. Make sure you guys are rocking with us, man. All right. Yeah, subscribe, go over to all those things. A couple of things I want to get into before we wrap up the live tonight. In regards to Micah too, there was something else I wanted to throw in there as well. Ron. The Micah situation, I know somebody had mentioned it last week. We talked about it on Real Fans, Real Talk. I get the impression Jerry is going to let this thing play out. Now, I originally thought Micah was going to get his contract before the season started. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think their deadline, the Cowboys and Micah's team, their deadline is Thursday. They wanted to get that done by Thursday at the latest, so that they wouldn't be the distraction going into the season. They wouldn't have to keep talking about it. I don't think they're going to get it done by Thursday. I just get the impression from what Jerry Jones said in his interview with Stephen A. Smith, the way Jerry Jones conducts his business, and I watched America's Team documentary on Netflix. It's actually a really good documentary. I would recommend sports fans to watch it. If you enjoyed The Last Dance, you're going to enjoy America's Team. But I get the impression that Jerry's going to play this thing out, and he feels a little disrespected by Micah. He also feels like this is a situation where he can kind of control how this all plays out. He's got a lot of control here. Unfortunately, I know people don't want to hear it, but Micah is under contract this season. If Dallas decides they could franchise him next year, under the franchise tag, Micah would make about $35 million next year. They could franchise him the year after in 2027. Under the franchise tag that year, he's going to be close to about $42 million. So if Jerry feels like this is the road we're going to go down, and we're going to basically squeeze the life not only out of the negotiations, but we're going to squeeze as much talent out of Micah Parsons before we have to make a long-term decision, he could go that route. And for Micah Parsons, I don't think he'll sit out this year. There's a lot of money to leave on the table. I don't think he'll sit out if he gets franchise tagged the next 2 years. Again, that's a lot of money to leave on the table. I think that's how Jerry's viewing it. So I would not be surprised. If I had to gamble and put money on it now, I would say they do not get the contract done before the start of the season next Thursday. Maybe in season, maybe if Micah gets off to such a hot start the first 2 or 3 weeks that they have no choice but to negotiate, maybe. But right now, I don't think it happens before they play next Thursday. Also, Trey Henderson got his new deal with the Bengals. That was one of them that was highly talked about. It could affect Micah's situation. They restructured it. He was set to make about $16 million this year. They upped it. It's a 1 year, $30 million deal. But more importantly, by doing that, the Bengals, Will Gordon just threw me off with that comment. We got to circle back. Trey Henderson is going to make 1 year, $30 million, but it allows now the Bengals to, if they want a franchise, they could trade him. He has no security beyond the season. So they can do a lot of things. Will Gordon, I did not know this. This must have happened right as I was going live. They said Deshaun Watson, SI reported an hour ago that he looks ahead of schedule and will force the Browns to make a $131 million decision. It's very, very interesting because, as my brother Will Gordon knows, we talked about this with Browns fans in a group chat. One of the reasons I thought Shador would not make the roster is because the Browns would not carry 4 quarterbacks. And I thought Deshaun Watson would be there at some point. I said as much in the conversation where I said early reports, even before this, there were reports that Deshaun was expected to be back by the second half of the season. Those in the group chat disputed that, said, no, Deshaun is sitting out this whole year. The Browns are not going to allow him to see the field. And now SI is reporting that not only does he look ahead of schedule, he's going to force them to make a tough decision on cutting him or playing him. Very interesting. We got to keep an eye on that. One last topic before we get out of here, unless we get any questions that come through. Again, make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast, The Sanchez Show. I'm live every Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Shoot me a like, shoot me a comment. Also live on Monday, 7 p.m., Real Fans, Real Talk. Subscribe to both podcasts. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Now, next week, you're not going to want to miss next week because next week, we're picking lines next week, Will Gordon and I. We got our 401k pick of the week where we advise you to withdraw all your money from your 401k account and place it on one game at your own discretion, of course. Now, the last topic, I'm going to end it off with this. We didn't get a chance to get into this. I was going to try to talk about it a little bit last week because the news had just broke. But we got to get to this. Jake Paul, Gervonta Davis. It looks like it's set for November 14th on Netflix. Now, there are still details that are leaking out. There have not been an official wait for this fight. There's no undercard that's announced. They're expecting to do all that within the next month. But Netflix is going hard at this. I want to say this first and foremost, though. The initial reports of a $200 million guarantee for Tank Davis, from everything I've heard, that is not true. Again, the official numbers for what they would be making for this fight have not been put out there. $200 million, though, is not an accurate figure. MVP Promotions, who's putting all this together, has already come out and said that's not accurate. That's somebody who just made up a post. Now, Tank Davis, I'm a big fan of Tank. I've always liked Tank. A couple of weeks ago, somebody in the comment section had posted about Tank saying, hey, I'm retiring. I said at that point, I did not believe that Tank was retiring. I said that they were at 30 years old, there were too many big money fights, and there was too much left on the table for Tank to retire at this point. What Tank was experiencing is no different than any other fighter who's had a lot of success in the sport, where you feel like you've made enough money, you feel like it's nothing, you kind of feel bored with the sport, I guess, is the best way I can put it. There wasn't anything out there for Tank. Now, do I agree that there was nothing out there for Tank? No. I'm just saying from his perspective. Me personally, I don't like this fight for Tank. I don't like this fight for a number of reasons, but I'll start with the most obvious. As a boxing fan, Tank Davis at 30 years old, and he's the top of the lightweight division, 140 pounds. There are too many great fighters that Tank has not fought to now do this novelty act of saying, I'm going to fight Jake Paul. All right? Jeremy Roach deserves his rematch. They had a draw their first time. There were negotiations about a rematch. For whatever reason, the negotiations broke down. Then that's when Tank decided to say, I'm going to retire. Now he's taking this fight. Why aren't you giving Roach the rematch? But aside from Roach, Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Boots Ennis. There are plenty of great fighters at 140 and 147 that you could fight. Now, Tank Davis has always tried to, because he's been the A side for the last 5 years of his career. When I say the A side, he kind of controls negotiations. For those that might not be familiar with how boxing works, when you're the A side, when you're the bigger name and you're the bigger draw for fans, you can kind of determine, you can dictate terms. You can dictate the size of the gloves. You can dictate the size of the ring. You can dictate what weight we fight at, right? A lot of fighters do it. It's the reason why Canelo and Crawford, they're fighting at 168. For people that are wondering why Crawford's going up so much, because Canelo is the A side, all right? Now, Tank, for the last 5 years, he's been the A side of all of his fights, even against Ryan Garcia, which is probably his biggest name recognition fight and biggest earning fight. He was the A side of that. That's why he made Ryan Garcia fight at 135. One of the things Tank and his people have talked about is, well, we don't want Tank really fighting above 140. They were skeptical about him going up to 142. They never really liked that idea of him going up to 142. There were all these, 147, sorry. 140 was kind of their limit. He's small in stature. Tank is only really like 5'4". So for you to take on the fight against Jake Paul, who you know is not going to come down at 140 pounds, you're going to probably have to fight. To be honest, he's probably going to meet Jake Paul at about 180 pounds, 185 pounds. I can't see Jake Paul getting any smaller than that. Pause. Jake Paul is 6'1". He naturally walks around at about 190 to 200 pounds. So in fight shape, he's fought at cruiserweight, which is high 100, just under 200 pounds, 190 pounds. Jake Paul ain't coming down to 140. He not weight draining himself in that regard. I don't even think Jake Paul will come down past 175 because that might be too much of a weight drain. So for all these years that Tank's people have used this excuse about what weight they could go to and why certain fighters would be off the table because they feel like, oh, that fighter might be too big. That's all bullshit at this point. Now, that's just me as a boxing fan. I didn't even mention Keyshawn Davis, who I think is a great fighter as well. And that could be another great fight. Now, do any of these fighters give you the opportunity to make the bag that you could make against Jake Paul? No. Honestly, if you fight Devin Haney, if you fight Shakur, and I think if you fight Teofimo Lopez, I think those could be the biggest three draws. I think the rematch against Roach would be really, really good, but that's almost has a regional and a local feel to it because Roach is from DC, Tank is from Baltimore, and so there's that rivalry kind of in the area. But in terms of a national fight that would have people really excited, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, those would be the ones that mega boxing fans would want to come out and see and be a part of and witness, right? Now, like I mentioned, you take this fight, the money-wise, but it just doesn't make sense to me that at 30 years old, you're chasing the novelty act of a fight against a name like Jake Paul, as opposed to cementing your legacy as one of the greatest. Because right now, as a Tank fan, I can't really say that Tank is an all-time great. Was he exciting to watch? Yes. But I would debate that with anybody. How could we say Tank is an all-time great when his resume is missing so many quality guys? Shout out to Hot Seat Podcast. I agree. He said Tank is Duncan. All these young boys playing games. Back in the 80s and 90s, boxers fought each other. Yes, I agree with that. And I know the politics of the game were different then. But to me, there's no way we could ever have a discussion. If this is how this plays out for Tank, there's no way we can have a discussion ever about Tank being an all-time great. Were some of his performances exciting? Yes. Will we talk about some of these knockouts that he's had and some of the performances he had against certain guys? Absolutely. But there's no way I'm putting Tank in the all-time great list. When I look at his resume, the best fighters on his resume are probably not even Hall of Fame fighters. Gamboa was not a Hall of Fame fighter. I don't think Pitbull Cruz is a Hall of Fame fighter. I don't think Ryan Garcia is a Hall of Fame fighter. Those are the three best fighters on his resume. None of those guys are Hall of Famers. And if you're telling me the closest fight you've had against Rhodes, you won't even run that back. I'm sorry. The legacy, fuck legacy. It just in general, the career in general to me is bullshit at this point. You didn't fight anybody of real significance. And like I just mentioned, quality guys who are trying to make fights. No matter how you feel about Devin Haney, I give Devin Haney his credit. He went over to fight Kambosos for the belt. He took on Lomachenko. He took on Ryan Garcia. He's tried to fight the guys. You know, Progoros, he's tried to fight the guys. Tank, to me, doesn't come across as somebody trying to fight the guys. Same thing with Teofimo. He's trying to fight the guys. He fought Lomachenko. He fought Kambosos. He went up in weight to get another belt. He's trying to fight the guys. To me, I just don't see that from Tank. And if maybe this is Tank's swan song, maybe he feels like this is it. I'm out the game and I'm going to collect this major payday. But I just think from a resume standpoint, it's bullshit. It's whack at that point, man. Even if Tank wins this fight against Jake Paul, to me, he would have to really come back and commit himself to fighting the best names before we could take him serious again. Tank, to me, in a way, has spit on the game of boxing. And I love Tank Davis, but I'm being real. Tank has always said, I'm not worried about belts. Tank has never made an effort to unify division. A lot of these fights Tank is fighting is not even for belts. They're just the fact that he has a following and people love seeing him fight. He's really just fighting for money at this point. And so maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe that's why he is so comfortable taking on this fight, because he has no interest in winning belts and cementing something that could live beyond his fighting days. Maybe it is just about a bag. And I'm going to say this now. If it's a legitimate fight, if it's not an exhibition, if it's a legitimate fight, Tank Davis could be in trouble in this fight. And I know people, Jake Paul is seriously trained in boxing for the last 6 years. Now, does Tank have a higher IQ than him? Absolutely. Is Tank a better boxer than him? Absolutely. But you're talking about damn near a 70-pound weight advantage and at least a 6 to 7 feet height advantage. Those things cannot be overlooked. Tank Davis, if this is a legitimate fight, there's going to come a point where Tank Davis is going to have to handle some of the power from Jake Paul. Now, is Jake Paul going to walk him down and cut off the ring? Probably not. No, Tank is still going to be able to move around and do what he needs to do. And Tank is going to try to get on the inside and chop him down and things like that. But you can't tell me that at some point Tank isn't going to have to withstand some of the pressure. Jake is going to land a shot. Jake is going to land a couple shots. And Tank, as a smaller man, is going to have to handle that power. So I'm not as quick to be like, oh, it's all a joke and Tank is just going to do whatever he wants with him in that ring. Nah, I think Tank's going to have some struggles. We can't compare this to a Mayweather for Logan, because Logan didn't have the same boxing experience as Jake. It's nowhere near the same. Floyd and Logan Paul, that was a true exhibition. Floyd did whatever he wanted with him whenever he wanted. But again, Logan Paul was a novice. Logan, compared to his brother, Jake has been in there with actual boxers. Jake is trained for the last 6 years. Like, why are we acting like Jake Paul just woke up and said, oh, I'm just going to fight Tank Davis? He's been in there with legitimate boxers. So he has a pretty good idea of what he's doing. And then if you're going to put a smaller man in front of him, all I got to do is land 1 or 2 shots. Let's not act like Tank is the greatest defensive fighter we've ever seen. Not even close. But my opinion on it still stands, though. I'm highly disappointed at Tank. I think it's super bullshit of Tank to take that fight. As I mentioned, there's a great rundown of other fighters that he could have won at and that he could have won against. And to take this fight at this point at 30 years old, when there's so much more you can give to the sport, to me is bullshit. We're going to wrap up on that note. Again, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Sanchez Show. We are live every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. over on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Log in on Monday with us as myself and Trip Young, Real Fans, Real Talk. We have another great episode for you guys. And go back in the archives. We had a great episode with Kathy Boswell that's up right now on YouTube, and Tina Hutchinson, that's also on the YouTube as well. Next Wednesday, when I go live, I'll have the NFL picks for you guys, as well as some reactions to the opening weekend in college football. With that being said, I am Eric Sanchez. This is the Sanchez Show. We'll see you guys next week. Enjoy your week.